Today on the Everyman series, a small school story of perseverance, hard work, and above all, gratitude. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In Kennesaw, Georgia, just northwest of Atlanta, there is an FCS school that gets about 9,000 people a game. This is not FBS, Ohio State, rockin' stadiums, none of this stuff. This gets fewer attendees than an average Locked On Vikings podcast. But that doesn't stop a redshirt freshman in his first game, decked out in all yellow, from getting a little bit nervous. He doubles over, he throws up in the tunnel, gets his nerves about him, and runs out there. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day every single day. Welcome to the Everyman series, where we're going over the backstories, the journey to the NFL, the journey to the Vikings for every new player on the 90, including ones that you probably missed it when they joined. I certainly wouldn't have covered it on this podcast because this guy joined the practice squad in the middle of the season and signed a futures contract. So we never really get a chance to learn about him, but his name is Travis Bell. We begin this one in the heart of Montgomery, Alabama. There lies a chewed up football field, brown patchy grass, a black track around it. There's, as far as I can tell from Google Maps, not even bleachers, not even a bench. I mean, we are talking about a bare minimum operation. But like a lot of high schools in Montgomery, Alabama, Johnson Abernathy Greats High School, formerly known as Jefferson Davis, I think I can guess why they changed that, produces a lot of professional athletes. And Octavia Spencer, fun fact. But it also produced Travis Bell, who is a defensive tackle for the Minnesota Vikings now. Somebody who joined the team under circumstances. You probably missed it, to be honest. I mean, he joined in the middle of December on the practice squad, signed a futures deal later. Not the kind of name you'd be clocking while we're like trying to figure out what the seating stuff is going to be with Sam Darnold, right? He was raised by a single mom, had one older sister, and mom took care of everything. So he was 5 years old, and mom introduced him to football. And it got its hooks in him immediately, like it does for so many of these NFL player stories. Of course, they grow up obsessed with football. But he stayed in sports a lot, very active kid, big kid. And that means two things. One, hey, you're staying out of trouble. That's great. But two, because he was so big, he was always going to play like a grade up. And he was just like always with the big boys. So he was used to kind of being challenged above his age and above his size a little bit, just by virtue of having to play a grade up all the time. That brings us to this big ass eighth grader trying out for spring football before he goes into high school. And all of the high school coaches are like, oh man, this kid has it. This is a refrain that you hear a lot when you see like interviews and stuff about this. The main source for this story, by the way, is an article at The Athletic by one Kevin Fishbane. It's a great piece. I'll link it in the show notes. In that and all the other articles, everybody who talks about Travis Bell talks about this like it factor that he has. Like this kid just has it. There's this thing that everybody has if they're good, and he's got that thing. And they're talking about like a character trait. It's very much like, oh, what a great kid, the kind of kid you want to be part of the program. But also there's this fire to the way that he approaches practice and the way that he approaches games and the way that he approaches his work ethic and everything. And it just constantly impresses people throughout this story. In high school, Travis Bell will play a little bit of D-line. So the then known as Jefferson Davis High School was in a pretty bad way. They were on like big losing streaks, and they were a program that was kind of in need of a turnaround. But what that meant is if you're a freshman on that team, that you're going to get in for the end of the season when none of the other games really matter and you're 0-12 and who cares? Travis did everything he could to get on the field. He played a lot of D-line. That was his main thing. But shoot, we'll put you in at fullback. We'll give you a carry. He'll do whatever you need me to do, coach. And I think that's part of the attitude that coaches like so much, right? Yes, coach, I'll do whatever, coach. Like there's no semblance of like, but I'm not a fullback. Like whatever. You want me to go hit that guy? I'll go hit that guy. He loves it. The program started to turn around during his time there at Jefferson Davis High School. But there was one matchup in particular for Travis Bell, his senior year, that sort of changed things around. It was Buford. Now, Buford is a school you may have heard of. They've got NFL alumni all over the place. They have three alumni in the NFL right now. Two of them are long snappers, the Ferguson brothers. You might have heard of it. Their line plays both ways. So Jefferson Davis will lose this matchup in a close one. It was 38-30, but the head coach will notice that they're getting their best players on the field both ways all the time. That's really hard to do. I mean, there's a conditioning to that, especially in the trenches. Those are not the guys that are like known for their stamina of like running, right? But they're the best players. And if they can get in shape enough to be on the field both ways, you got to have them on the field both ways. So the head coach approaches Travis Bell about this. It's like, what do you think about playing offensive line? Of course, he's like, sure, coach. I'm in. What do you need? How do I do that? Like, let's go. He's no hesitation at all. We're going to change his number so that he's eligible to play O-line. And all right, let's go. So as a two-way player who all the coaches rave about, who is clearly the best player on the team, it is astounding that he will be a no-star recruit, 4.0 GPA, by the way, no-star recruit that's going to have to play in the Atlantic Sun Conference just to play Division I ball, and an ultimately draftable prospect that every school sees because he's at the heartland of football in the South, and still nobody really wants a piece. Why could that be? That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Gametime, the best place to find last-minute tickets. I've been to a number of Vikings games in my life. I've started using Gametime as the exclusive way to get tickets to those games when I'm traveling, and I got to make sure that everything is going to be right. Gametime is great. And by the way, there's some sports going on in Minnesota, some basketball games, a couple that you might want to get to that you might not have a lot of advance time to plan because you didn't know until yesterday that even was going to be a thing. So you didn't even know what the dates were going to be until Thursday night. So if you want to get tickets to that or concerts, comedy theater, whatever, you can head on over to Gametime. You can see your exact view before you buy on panoramic seat view. There are no surprises, and there are no surprises in the fees either. With the Gametime guarantee, you're getting the best deal. You can get 110% of the difference credited to you if you find a better price in the same row and section somewhere else. Just tell Gametime about it, and they'll get you all squared away. And you can find great seats for as low as $100 thanks to exclusive Gametime discounts on NFL tickets. The schedule is out, so this is all available now. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Every time a college scout came to Jefferson Davis High School, I don't know if its name had changed, but maybe it was Johnson Abernathy Grades, which is JAG, it's JAG High School. Like, come on. But anyways, anytime a college recruit would come there, they would be like, oh yeah, that kid's the best kid on the field. And they would point to Travis Bell. He was clearly the best kid. Now, there are other kids on that field that would end up going D1, that would go to Ole Miss and Alabama and stuff. But Travis Bell couldn't get that kind of offer. And the only reason is because he was small. He was listed at like 6 foot, not big, like 200, I think 60 some or something, like not big enough, right? By the time he comes to the combine, he'll weigh in at like 310, but as a kid, he doesn't come out as big. And that size ends up keeping him totally out of all of the recruiting cycle. There's very little hype around him, even though he's clearly the best kid there. That is exactly the kind of player that you need to look for when you are an FCS fledgling school in the Atlantic Sun Conference, and you need talent. You need to find the kid that's really good, but it's a theory that we talk about in the NFL too, right? Well, this guy's good, but some stupid thing is going to drop him and now suddenly is going to be a value, right? That's the kind of bargain bin stuff that you have to make your whole team out of at Kennesaw State. Kids who are good, who are talented, but have something about them that isn't like perfectly prototypical, so all the big schools are going to overlook them. That was the match made in heaven with Kennesaw State and Travis Bell. So he commits to Kennesaw State. Now, Kennesaw is in Georgia. It's near Atlanta. It's not that far from Montgomery, Alabama, like at least geographically. But it was far enough for him to start to get a little homesick, get a little worried. He'll actually take up a job in a medical supplies warehouse to send a little bit of money home to mom to help that out. He just wants to like do everything he possibly can, right? But he gets a little frustrated when he learns that as a freshman, he's going to redshirt. This is a frustration that a lot of college players will find no matter really where they come from or where they go to. You're the belle of the ball in high school. I mean, you're the dude, right? Especially if you're a D1 college player and you're on a high school field, you are like the dude. And then suddenly you show up to this college field and you're like down to essentially a version of the practice squad, right? Like, it's frustrating. So the homesick, the frustration, Travis Bell starts thinking, I don't even know if I want to do this. He picks up the phone. He calls his high school D-line coach and he says, Christmas break's coming up. I think I'm just going to go home and stay. I don't think I'm going to do this college thing anymore. And you got to understand that, like, perspective-wise, college was not an automatic thing to the Bell family. Nobody in the Bell family had ever gone to college. He was the first person to go to and graduate from college in his whole family. Congratulations to him for that, at least, right? But I don't know. For me, where I grew up in the suburbs of Lakeville, Minnesota, college was like culturally this must. It was this like automatic. You're gonna go to college. You'll figure it out, right? Take out a student loan, do whatever you want, like, or your parents pay or whatever, like whatever you're going to college. That was the culture. That was the way everybody, no matter how well off they were or weren't, was told about college. But it wasn't that way for the Bell family. It was, you graduate high school, you're going to get a job just like everybody else did. And college was seen as like pie in the sky. But you get a football scholarship and you can get a degree. Oh my God, you can change everything, right? But it makes it this sort of foreign thing. Well, why can't I just do what everybody else in my family has done? I'm going to go. So he calls his high school D-line coach and he says, this is what I'm thinking. And his high school D-line coach is like, we didn't do quitters. What are you talking about? You don't quit. What are you talking about? He's like, yeah, you're right, coach. And he decides he's going to stay. He sticks out the red shirt year. He's going to play next year. He'll work at the med supplies warehouse. It'll be all right. So sure enough, his red shirt freshman year, he earns the start. And that takes us to our scene of him yakking in the tunnel because he's so nervous before his first game against, I want to say it was Georgia State. But what I didn't tell you is that he runs out on the field after that nervous moment. And on the very first play, he lines up over the right guard, absolutely cooks him, gets in for a sack. Or maybe you call it a TFL. It might have been a QB draw, so it might have been like a run. But whatever, right? Just smokes a lineman, gets in, big play. What passes for the crowd there goes wild. We're doing great. And it's there that he knows, okay, I'm going to be all right. I'm going to make it. His journey at Kennesaw State is up and down, as Kennesaw State itself is up and down. They are not a program in its peak right now. And in fact, Brian Bohannon, the head coach that recruited him, that loved him, that loved seeing the undersized, but look how good he is kind of kid, is stepping down just a couple years after Travis Bell leaves. So it's a bit of a rough chapter. But one of the things about Kennesaw State is that nobody had ever been drafted from there. This was not a place you went thinking you were going to have NFL aspirations. This was somewhere you go when you're just happy to get a scholarship and a degree out of this and play football, which you love so much, along the way. So he spends his years showing up in his like jumpsuit from work, changing out of it, getting to practice, and doing what he can to carve a life out somewhere. But as you know, it all starts to accelerate when you start meeting people on a bigger stage. And it already happened to him, right, with scouts coming to Jefferson Davis High School to go watch him run circles around his friends and then say, yeah, but he's too small. And it's going to happen again at the Kennesaw State Pro Day. But this is one of those times, I talk a lot about, in the Everyman series, about what we're going to say, you know, how are we going to make the movie out of your life, right? Your Sandra Bullock movie, what does it look like? And for Travis Bell, it's a way different movie depending on where you choose to roll the credits. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Small school pro days are always an interesting environment because you're never going to get the huge names out there. Maybe if there's like a Savon Revel type prospect, somebody, you know, Quinyon Mitchell, teams are going to run out there and see. But usually with a small school, they send a scout, they send to somebody, right? So it's a lot of these guys that aren't faces or names, but they're affiliated with NFL teams and they get to be the celebrity for the day, right? Ooh, you know, that guy's from the Jaguars. Ooh, that guy's from the Bears, right? And so I can only imagine what it's like when that group of people get super stoked on a guy. Because they're all going to go back and be like, I've got the secret from Kennesaw State. I'm reminded of a Levi Drake Rodriguez anecdote from last year's Everyman series where he was, you know, this huge secret because he was from such a small school. And as the Vikings guy pulls up to go talk to go to his pro day, like 8 other scouts are there and they all see each other and like, oh God, like I thought this was my secret. I wonder what the vibe was like in Kennesaw State when Travis Bell put up 30 reps at his pro day, got up and at 310 pounds, rattled off a 5-second 40, almost 5 flat, 5:01, which is insane for his size and would have been like 7th best at the combine among D tackles. But he's too small. That's the whole thing. He's too short. There's still an issue of being a 6-foot player, right? There's precedent for that though in the NFL. And there's been plenty of like undersized defensive tackles that have made great careers, gone to the Hall of Fame, right? I mean, most famously there's Aaron Donald or there's John Randall or even Alan Page if you want to go for a couple of Vikings. Both of those guys famously small for the position. But the one that Travis Bell always invokes is Grady Jarrett. Grady Jarrett is about the same size as him and had quite the career. Right? Not a career you're going to sneeze at, Grady Jarrett, right? Probably a Hall of Famer in his own right when he finally retires and is eligible. So that's kind of part of the pitch from his agent to all of these teams is like, yeah, no, look, the size isn't right, but you cannot deny this dude is good at football. You can't deny it. He's good at football. Yeah, he doesn't look the way you would expect somebody, but he's good. All right, he's good. And by the way, look how strong and athletic and fast he is. So the pre-draft grind is on. We're going to do the pro days. We're going to do the pro day. We're going to do all the meetings, the circuit, and all that stuff. And when it's time for the actual draft itself, it's crazy nerve-wracking. The first few rounds are going to go by. You're not a first-round guy, right? And he knows that. So you just kind of have to wait for those first couple of days of the draft to go by, watch it on TV kind of like everybody else. But the day 3 is when you're watching your phone. You're like, when's this going to happen, right? So he's got the TV on and he's watching players go. He's watching guys get taken over and over and over again. And eventually his agent calls him and says, hey, got some undrafted offers for you. Here's what this team is going to offer. Here's what this you might want to start thinking about. You know, if you don't get drafted, you might want to start thinking about which team you're going to go to because this decision is going to have to be made fast. He kind of takes this to mean he's not getting drafted. So he goes, he gets a little frustrated. He turns off the TV and he just starts pacing. And he turns off every light in the living room. He just paces and thinks about everything he has put into football and what little it's giving him back out. Then he gets another call around the 6th round. The 6th round is what is publicly known, what's on like TV and been announced and stuff. But as these things go, like they're already well into the 7th round. So this is a 7th round draft pick. And it's not his agent. It's Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears. The Bears were enamored with Travis Bell throughout this entire thing, and they will tell you the same character stuff that you will hear from his high school, his college coaches. Wow, this kid just has it. He's got this. There is some air about him that just feels right. He's perfect for our organization. Just exactly the kind of young man you want in your organization. They'll tell you that same thing, enamored with the character, that hard work, that sense of principle that he has, and they love him. They take him. The mood changes pretty quickly, right? He stops thinking about all those undrafted things because he's a 7th round draft pick. My dude is a Chicago Bear. He gets guaranteed money in his contract. How fun. In rookie minicamp is when the article that I sourced a lot of this is written. And that must be when like the interview happened, because one of the quotes that he has there is, "I'm so grateful to be tired. I'm grateful to be exhausted." I think that's so beautiful. For somebody like Travis Bell, who has in every single way you could possibly spin it, earned the absolute hell out of this. I mean, this man was not given an inch. He earned every single inch and took a mile. And he is still like, God, I feel so lucky. Like that gratitude is mixing with the way that people talk about it. Like, I get it. I get why people are like just super enamored with Travis Bell, the guy, the human, the personality, the character. That gratitude to have to go into a rookie minicamp and work that hard. Well, it's the NFL. You're working damn hard all the time. And unfortunately in the NFL, around late August every year, a whole bunch of players get called into the GM's office and are told to bring their iPads. That's Travis Bell. He'll get cut after his first season. In the media sense for, say, Locked On Bears, right? People from our perspective, it was a fairly predictable cut. It was a crowded room. It was maybe going to be you'll spend a year on the practice squad kind of thing. We'll expose you to waivers, I guess, but like he would have had to knock off like Gervon Dexter or Andrew Billings or like a higher, players that ended up starting, right? He would have had to knock off, or DeMarcus Walker, who ended up, having a pretty big impact on a couple of games against the Vikings. Like it was just too much roster pressure, and there wasn't really room for him. It's a tough place to be. Kind of similar to where like Kobe King is, right? We know you're good, but who are you knocking off? So he doesn't knock off his version of a Brian Asamoah. And ends up on the practice squad. But that is kind of feels like it's the plan. Yeah, we spent a draft pick on you to make sure we got exclusive rights to you. But we're going to put you on the scout team and you're going to, develop for a little bit. You're a smaller player and all that, but you're a rookie, right? Okay. In the middle of the year, he gets a call from his agent. It's the Atlanta Falcons. They want to sign you off the practice squad, put you on the active roster, and actually play you. You're going to play NFL football here. You're going to make game checks. Talk about a guy that worked in a medical supplies warehouse. A game check is like life-changing. And by the way, the reason they need you is because their dude's a little hurt. You might have heard of him. His name is Grady Jarrett. You have to go replace him now. I mean, come on. Like, how beautifully full circle is it? That's what I mean. Like, where do you roll the credits here? Dude looks up to Grady Jarrett all the time, then ends up replacing him. Feels like this beautiful full circle moment. Do you roll it right after he gets drafted, right after he gets cut, and it's a bittersweet thing? So he'll be on the active roster a little bit for Atlanta, but he won't stick around. He'll be cut later that year. He'll end up he'll end up the season of the 2023 season with Cincinnati and on their practice squad, and then he'll spend camp with them, but he won't make that team. He'll go back to the Bears practice squad the year after. Remember, the Bears love him. And like they just lost out on him because he got poached off the practice squad. But given the opportunity, once he gets cut from Cincinnati, they're like, "Hey man, you want to come back and like continue what we were doing here?" And he's like, "Absolutely." But that also won't last at the end of the at the end of the 2024 season. He'll be released from the practice squad, and around like December-ish, the Vikings will pick him up, sign him to a futures deal, et cetera, et cetera. And now here he is. Looking again at an incredibly crowded defensive tackle room and a super difficult one to make. It's kind of a never tell me the odds thing, but he has lived a very small school world. And it has to be so different going from a beat up field with no bleachers to 10,000 people at Kennesaw State to the Atlanta Falcons on Monday nights. Like, that's a lot. And as feel good of a fun story that, you know, Travis Bell is, at the end of the day, there are some people that are just college players that top out and don't really latch on in the pros. And maybe that is him. But what's beautiful about the NFL and professional sports in general is that that never gets assumed. I can assume it and you can assume it and we can end up wrong and we can have cupcakes on our face. But it's never a done deal. It's never over till the fat lady sings. It's not over till 0-0 and every game starts 0-0, right? So Travis Bell has every opportunity in the world to show up to camp, outplay Jalen Redmond, knock him off the roster and say, this is mine. Or maybe more realistically, show out in the fourth quarter of a preseason game and go get on somebody else's 53-man roster on waiver claims. Absolutely can happen to him. He's made a little money up to now. And if that's that, then it's still a pretty successful venture, all things considered. But whatever it is, what we can know and be happy for is that Travis Bell will be grateful for it. I'll see you next week. And as always, Skol.